Hi, I'm Susie Garden, and this is the Ageless and Awesome podcast. I'm an age-defying naturopath and clinical nutritionist, and I'm here to bust myths around women's health and aging so that you can be ageless and awesome in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. The Ageless and Awesome podcast is dedicated to helping women through perimenopause and menopause with great health, a positive mindset, and outrageous confidence. Hit subscribe or follow now, and let's get started. Hello, gorgeous one, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ageless and Awesome podcast. This week, I'm talking about a topic that's pretty close to my heart because I have so many of my clients with this problem that particularly turns up at hormonal events in their lives. Let's put it that way. What I'm talking about is hair loss. And this can be quite distressing. And for any of you that this has happened to, I'm sure you completely understand what I'm talking about. Now, it's probably fairly common knowledge that after pregnancy, that many women go through periods of hair loss, and that's because of the hormones adjusting. And there's a similar thing that can happen. It doesn't happen probably as frequently, I don't think, to women in perimenopause, but it's definitely something that can happen. And it's a pretty easily explainable phenomenon, although there can be multiple causes of hair loss in women. I'm going to list off a number of possible causes. And so, if this is something that's impacting you, then you may think, oh, maybe this applies to me. And perhaps for many of these possible causes, there are actually blood testing that you can do to actually know for sure whether this is potentially a reason why you're losing hair. I feel pretty lucky. If you've seen pictures of me, I've got a fairly luscious mane of long hair, but it has taken a lot of care in order to have my hair in this really healthy state. And I think a lot of the things that I do, including having a personalized nutrition plan, really help me to make sure that I'm getting exactly the nutrients that I need to make sure that, actually all of my body systems are working well, but including hair and hair growth. So let's talk about some of these possible causes of hair loss in women, specifically in that perimenopause phase. So hormones, obviously, we have that drop in estrogen and progesterone, and sometimes that drops, and what that can do is actually give us a relative androgen excess or relative high androgens. Androgens are like more of our male type of sex hormones, like testosterone. So it's not that the testosterone is getting higher, it's just that our estrogen and progesterone is dropping and the testosterone might be staying the same, or it might be dropping a little bit, but it means that we have that imbalance there. Stress is a massive cause of hair loss, and any of you that have been through stressful events may have found that that's happened to you. So definitely that's one to look at. And we know that women in their 40s in particular can be going through quite a lot of stress because of their family, their career, so many different things going on when we're in our 40s that may really increase stress. Thyroid issues can often occur after the age of 40. And we'll get into that shortly, but definitely thyroid. It's one of the things, if I've got a client in front of me that's complaining of hair loss. When I say complaining, by the way, that's a medical thing. Even when I was a nurse, you talked about someone complaining of this. It must be an old-fashioned way of expressing what the problem is. Okay, so please don't feel like it's a negative connotation, because I think as soon as I said, I thought, oh, that can sound really negative, but it's actually what we say in medical kind of terminology. So if I do get a client that's coming in that has the hair loss happening, then I like to dive into that a little bit and just see, well, what potentially could be causing that? And thyroid is often one that comes up. Nutrient deficiencies can also be a culprit in hair loss, and particularly iron and zinc. Autoimmune conditions can cause it, fungal infections can cause it, and some medications. And some of the medications that are really commonly prescribed, drugs like antidepressants, cholesterol-lowering medications, antibiotics, antihypertensives, so they lower blood pressure, the oral contraceptive pill, blood thinners. There's actually quite a lot. If you're on a number of medications, that could be a cause, or even if you're on just one of these types of meds. And the list is quite extensive. So if you want to know more about that, you can definitely just Google prescribed medications that cause hair loss in women, something like that, and you'll get a whole list of them. The other thing, often we're getting this hair loss happening from the scalp, and potentially at the same time getting random hairs growing on our face. So the chin hairs, the mustache, fantastic. That's exactly, getting the hair growing where we don't want it and losing hair from where we actually do want it. And that happens, it's another sign that perhaps you have this relative androgen excess. So the low estrogen and progesterone and the elevated, or not elevated testosterone, but relatively elevated androgens such as testosterone. Another thing when I'm talking about these sorts of hormone imbalances is that if you've been diagnosed with PCOS in the past, you can get this hair loss because of the same hormone imbalance. And so that is another potential diagnosis for hair loss is PCOS, or polycystic ovarian syndrome. And the thing which is fairly key with that particular syndrome is insulin resistance. So insulin is a hormone that has many, many roles in the body, and it's a really important one to be managing well. And that's something that we as humans can control with what we choose to put in our diet. And the thing is, as we're encroaching our perimenopause and postmenopause years, we do have a tendency as part of that process to become less sensitive to insulin and therefore more insulin resistant. So there's that similarity with PCOS in that you get that insulin resistance in perimenopause and you can get these hormonal imbalances. And so if you have PCOS and going into peri, I actually haven't looked up to see if there's research on this, but it wouldn't surprise me if that kind of if you've had a relatively good balance and then go into perimenopause, there may be more imbalance that happens that you may need to correct for. And things like reversing the insulin resistance can actually reduce the facial hair and improve the hair loss. So, and I'm going to talk shortly about how you can take steps to reverse insulin resistance or to make your insulin more sensitive, particularly in perimenopause and menopause. One thing I do want to just mention, there is a condition called androgenic alopecia, and that is probably the medical name for this female pattern hair loss. So androgenic alopecia. And this is the one that's linked to the relatively high androgens. And hormone testing can definitely be beneficial in hair loss in women for anything, for this androgenic alopecia, but for any hair loss that, when I'm saying hair loss, I'm not just talking about a little bit that comes out. I'm talking about you wake up in the morning and you've got hair on your pillow, or that you're really noticing a lot more hair in the shower when you shampoo your hair. And I know for myself, I go through periods of time where sometimes there'll be a lot of hair coming out. So sometimes I think you just have a bit of a shed every now and again. And maybe because I do have very long hair, that would be the case. But I do always keep an eye on that. If I feel like, oh, there's quite a lot of hair coming out, I do sort of go, okay, well, what have I been doing with my diet? What have I been, slacking off a bit? And I make sure that I'm correcting that. Also checking in with my stress. So that's something to think about when I'm talking about this hair loss. It's actually not just the daily hair loss that you might have. It is significant. Yeah. You might even notice bald patches on your head. And if you do, then you really do need to get that checked out by a medical professional because it can be tested and it can be managed. But definitely, we can test things like hormones. We can test the thyroid, which, as I mentioned before, when as we get over 40, often that's when thyroid conditions appear. And it's generally the hypothyroidism. So it's the kind of thyroid condition where you tend to put on weight, you get fatigued, feel kind of sluggish, you can get constipation, and you can get this hair loss happening. And the thing is, when you have this thyroid function is a bit low, it impacts, as well as those things, it impacts your circulation. That's why people with a hypothyroid can often feel cold. And it's the poor circulation that can potentially lead to hair loss because you're not getting, good circulation to the scalp. So it's important, again, that's something that can easily be tested through blood to see what your thyroid's doing. And most people that are getting regular blood testing, like I get my bloods done every year, the thyroid test is a standard test. Now, you might want to go a deeper level of thyroid testing, in which case you would want to be looking at some private pathology, looking at working with a naturopath or nutritionist that can order that for you. Because in Australia, under Medicare, there's only a very top line thyroid marker that can be tested. And sometimes having that deeper level of testing can be very helpful in just analyzing and making sure you're not missing anything, particularly if you are having symptoms. Other nutrients. So low iron actually can impact thyroid function. So you want to make sure that your iron levels are checked regularly as well. And generally in a yearly blood test, that's going to be checked. And I mean, I'm sure you're well aware, iron levels can be low for many reasons, particularly women in perimenopause. If you're having exceptionally heavy periods, that can really drain your iron. There's just an epidemic of iron deficiency, to be honest, here in Australia at the moment, but in all age groups. And it can be from period issues. It can also be just lack of absorption of iron. If you're stressed, your ability to absorb your iron or your nutrients generally from your food is going to be decreased. If your diet isn't really particularly good, if you're drinking coffee with your meals, for example, that's going to block your absorption of things like iron and zinc. If you have got some gut issues like chronic constipation, chronic diarrhea, abdominal pain, excess gas, and that can be suggestive that maybe your gut may not be absorbing your nutrients very well. If you're quite fatigued, that can be a sign of iron deficiency, but can also be a sign of many other deficiencies. It can also be a sign of low thyroid function. So it's not something really to be ignored. If you're feeling fatigued, it really does need to be checked out by a healthcare professional. So stress I mentioned before, and I think most people, if you've been through a period of very intense stress, you may have experienced some hair loss. And so learning to regulate your nervous system can be one of I think it's a key life skill, to be honest, for everybody, including kids, to learn, because there are stressful things going on in our world all of the time. And when I say in our world, I don't necessarily mean around the globe, although there is that, but I just mean in your world, that there can be things that are causing you a lot of stress. And so if you can learn to regulate your nervous system and doing that, that's pretty easy to do that with even just some deep breathing. But there's spending time in nature, going for a daily walk. I've started doing a daily afternoon walk because one of my dogs is getting a bit skitsy in the afternoon, and I find I'm doing it for her to kind of make her more settled, but I feel so much better after I've done that walk. And I'm very lucky. I live near bushland, so whenever I'm walking, I'm around trees. Sometimes I see koalas, I see lots of birds, I can see the ocean. So that I'm very fortunate in that gives me a lot of opportunities for connection to nature. Even if you're walking around your, suburban street, just looking at any of the gardens, the trees, the sky, noticing any birds, anything like that is going to help connect you to nature. You don't have to have the bush or the ocean there to inspire you or to have that connection to nature. So I guess the main things I wanted to highlight when I'm speaking about hair loss and when I'm seeing hair loss in clients is there are generally my top 5, I guess, is what I look for. So one is the hormonal imbalances. So is this person in perimenopause? Are they postpartum? Have they got PCOS? They're probably the main ones. And we can absolutely do the testing for hormones. It's a blood test. It's pretty easy. We can also do things like a Dutch test. That's a urine test. That's going to give like an unbelievable analysis. It's a fantastic test. It is quite expensive, and you can get away with, if it's just for something like this, like looking at hair loss, you can get away with just doing blood testing, which is a lot cheaper. Thyroid, obviously I mentioned, so testing for thyroid issues, if the symptom pattern kind of matches that of low thyroid, that can be really helpful to just even rule it out as a cause of hair loss. Insulin resistance. So again, this is something that can be tested and also managed. Stress we spoke about already. And also I would always just promote nutrition. I love the power of food. I am constantly amazed by the power of food and what it can do for your health, your well-being, and how quickly it can actually work. And particularly I'm talking about personalized nutrition, which uses your blood tests, uses your body measurements and any medical conditions and food preferences to design a nutrition plan that has the exact foods, the exact proteins, veggies, salads, bread portions, also portion sizes of your macros, so that you have no confusion. You know exactly what you need to be eating and when, and you know it's going to be really supporting your optimal health. Now, I often get asked about supplements when it comes to hair loss, and there are a few. Zinc definitely can help. And, you know, I work with a lot of women that are a little deficient in zinc. So you can take zinc without being tested. Just make sure if you're taking it, you're not taking it at the same time you're having coffee. So I often recommend for my clients they have it at night, have it with a meal, because it can make some people feel a bit nauseated. And yeah, so zinc can be helpful for hair and hair loss. Silica can be really good, and you can buy silica supplements. All those hair and nail supplements you see at the pharmacy have got silica in them. And I have used silica from time to time myself. If I feel my nails need a little bit of extra TLC, or my hair, then I'll just take a month of silica supplements, and that really kind of gives it a little boost. Collagen, I find, can be very helpful and it has multiple uses. It's great for skin, it's great for gut health, and you know, we do, unfortunately, as part of just getting, I hate saying the aging process, but it is, once we're over 40 and 50, our ability to make our own collagen does drop. So having collagen is super important, and having vitamin C with it, because that helps the body use the collagen. That's pretty important as well. If you're thinking about taking an iron supplement, I would always recommend getting tested for your iron levels first, because it is possible to have too much iron. And I think it's kind of seen as being a very easy supplement to take. It's so accessible. It's so easy to buy it, but there can be problems if you've got too much iron on board. So I really recommend that if you're concerned about your iron, that you go and get some testing done. What else do I want to say? I think that was probably about it. The main thing is to be patient. It does take time to correct nutritional deficiencies. It does take time to see the results in hair, because obviously it grows pretty slowly for a start, and it can take 6 months to see improvements when we're looking at hair loss. And because there's a lot that's going on in the body that needs to be addressed in order to get that beautiful hair growing well. As I mentioned before, I think definitely if you've got really obvious bald patches happening and you don't know why, please go and talk to a healthcare professional about that. That's not something that I would recommend you DIY and just have a bit of silica. That can be a sign of an autoimmune condition, and definitely needs to be assessed because there can be some specific things done to really get on top of that. That's not something you muck around with. So I think that's probably all. Actually, the only other thing that I think I've talked about this on the pod before, it might have been a while ago, but probably for the past year or so, I've been wearing a silk bonnet to bed. And I know it sounds a bit odd. When I say the word bonnet, I feel like I'm back in the 1800s, but it's just basically a silk cap. It's because I've got long hair, mine's sort of a fairly long one, but I found since I've been wearing that, it's been an absolute game changer for my hair because it protects it during the night as I'm, am moving around in bed. My hair's not getting caught anywhere. It's when I take the cap off in the morning, my hair looks like I've had it straightened. It just so silky, so flat, no frizz. It's amazing. And you don't have to pay a lot of money for these things. If you just Google silk sleep bonnet, you'll see them around, mainly online. I've bought mine online, and I highly recommend. So I hope that's been helpful. If you have any questions about this, please head over to Instagram at the perimenopause path to engage with me. You can DM me, make a comment on the podcast post, and I'd love to hear what you think. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see you next week with some more fresh content. Thanks so much for joining me on the Ageless and Awesome podcast. If you liked this episode, please make sure you click the little plus button if you're on Apple Podcasts, or the follow button if you're on Spotify, so that you get each new episode delivered to you every single week. If you feel like writing me a 5-star review, you would absolutely make my day. If you found this episode resonated with you, head over to my Instagram and DM me at the perimenopause path. I would love to connect with you.